When we crack open the cell, it's hard to come up with a good analogy. Some have called it like a city, and that's an analogy we can run with. You have the nucleus with DNA. It's really the information nerve center, and now I've mixed my metaphors even more so because cells are part of nerves, and anyway. But that's where the information processing happens. Information from where? So that's sort of in the middle of the cell. If we go to the surface of the cell, that's where it's going to interact with its environment. And there's channels and signal reception. You can think of it as a cell phone tower that's listening for things from the environment and chemicals, signals from other cells. This, as the body gets built in the womb, there has to be coordination saying, I'm building the finger, and we built the finger. We don't need another one, or we need 9 more. That sort of thing. There's signals, chemical signals being passed on. There's receptors at the cell listening for those molecular signals. Those signals then get transmitted through a whole other cascade of chemicals into that information center. So that's one source for monitoring the environment. Not only what's there, what chemicals are present, can we transport in what we need, but who's talking, what's talking. And what's going on and what needs to happen. Do we need to divide? There's signals to divide, and so forth. And that's a whole web of complexity that's incredible. Now that's information flow in one direction from the outside in. Someone obviously, or something obviously has to be giving this signal. So you could go to another cell that maybe was the sender. What would have happened there? It might have received its own signal. Signal gets passed on through a whole cascade of relays, basically, to the information nerve center. That might be a protein then recognizes a section of that DNA ladder, binds right there and starts making an RNA, a message. It's called messenger RNA because it really is a subsection. It takes a message then maybe out to the cell. The RNA itself might do something. That's a whole world of activity no one anticipated, really. RNAs themselves sometimes will go in and execute other signals and processes and purposes in the cell. Other times they'll be taken outside the nucleus, translated on ribosomes to proteins, and the protein itself might be a signal that then it shoots back out the cell into to the next one over, and it could be a signal that stays in the cell and gets passed through pores. Some cells are interconnected, and there's channels that can pass between them, and they can pass signals this way. If you're a gut cell, or let's say maybe part of the blood system, there's ways, if there's an orientation to your cell, like you have in the gut with epithelia and cilia and so forth, you're passing things, you're taking in nutrients to pass them on to distribute. So you have a whole, within the cell, a postal system to go from here to here, but also within the body, an entire zip code and system, and take it in and go this way, in a sense, sort of unidirectional. So you have signals within the cell, you have that nerve center, you have a surface, you have communication between the two, you have a garbage disposal system, back to the city analogy. Things get old, things get mistakes, they get sent off and kind of broke down. You have a power plant. So if you're in the gut, or maybe you're not in the gut, you've got to wait for those gut cells to take in from the intestines, pass it through the bloodstream, send it around the body. You're listening for it, or maybe you have a receptor on your cell surface for sugars. In come the sugars. Then you got to have proteins to break down the sugars, and those eventually get those breakdown products get sent over to mitochondria. These are the power plants under the cell, and they take it and they transform it really to a form of, I'd call it cellular electricity. Now it's not real electricity, it's ATP in this sense, just happens to be that. And it's just like electricity, we plug into outlets and we harness it to power all sorts of different things, to accomplish all sorts of different purposes. The cell uses this. It's nice to have this source, then you can plug in, so to speak. Well, I need to divide and copy my DNA. Well, I'll take some power from here and ATP or some other form perhaps to start synthesizing DNA subunits and connecting those subunits together. So you have signaling, you have garbage disposal, you have information processing. There are cells that engulf other things. I'm talking just about your average cell. You have all sorts of specialized cells in the body. You have immune cells that'll engulf bacteria and form a little pocket and then break them down. So once you expand to that level, the amount of activity and the interactions within the cell and between cells and around the body from top to bottom is beyond any one human's ability to catalog. I've thought about how much information is there in our billions of letters of DNA code. Something in there, and in the way it's structured, encodes every little detail. And to write out those instructions in English sentence form, this protein, when it reaches this concentration, is going to bind this part of DNA at this time, one tiny little step in this massive process, would fill reams and reams, volumes of books that no one person could ever hope to comprehend. So it really blows your imagination even. Once you start getting into the inner details, it's an incredible testament to a superintelligence and designer behind all of it.